Change of plans.
So, since this is an IoT project, Wi-Fi only not microcontroller is needed. I started out with the ESP32 since this is better than the ESP8266. I chose the ESP32 because it's much faster and more capable, and it has two processors, which enables it to do two things at once. To help me get started, I used ifttt.com as a starting point for home automation projects and some YouTube projects. Problem is that the internet doesn't see the ESP32 as best option for IoT projects. This is a Raspberry Pi. And because I'm a broke student, I bought the cheapest with Wi-Fi, of course, which is the Raspberry Zero W, which stands for Wi-Fi. The Raspberry Pi will be used to process the measurements of the BME280, which will be directly connected to the controller. As output, I wanted to have a buzzer and some LEDs to indicate the preset temperature and humidity range. Other than the temperature, humidity and pressure that I get from the sensor, I also want some measurements from weather data online, such as the temperature, humidity and pressure outside, the sunrise, sunset and a weather forecast. With the temperature, humidity and pressure, I also want to see a maximum and minimum of a preset time. I want to see these measurements on a 7-inch IPS LCD display and on thingspeak.com. The 7-inch screen or display will be connected to the Raspberry Pi with transition adapters because the LCD display can't be connected straight away to this Raspberry Pi Zero. And finally, I want to talk to the Raspberry with a speech recognizer. I did take some time before I finally found a good one, and I hope it will work out for this project. If I get to communicate with it by giving me weather information, I will also add a speaker. Oh, and because I want to keep the energy need as low as possible, the screen will go to sleep mode with an ultrasound module or voice detection module to wake it up again.
So we just went from an ESP32 to a Raspberry Pi Zero W. But the thing is, I don't know anything about a Raspberry. So I have to learn stuff before beginning this project. Now I found some books on the shelf of my father, great father, about embedded Linux systems and some sensors with the Raspberry Pi. So I think I have to read those first and then continue with my project with a Raspberry Pi as the new microcontroller.
So, welcome to this project once again. Here I have the schematic, almost finished, but some pieces are still missing, such as the speaker, which will be connected to the Groove voice recognition module, and the LCD display, the TFT display, which will be connected to the Raspberry Pi. Other than that, the ultrasound module here is finished. The BME280, which will connect both to the Raspberry Pi, as shown in the last vid. Of course, the speech recognizer here, the 9 LEDs, and the buzzer. And now it's just wiring it in real life. Yeah, that's it.
So, a small thing to notice when buying a Raspberry Pi is the difference between a Raspberry Pi Zero and a Raspberry Pi Zero W. So I bought a Raspberry Pi a couple of days ago, which has a Raspberry Pi logo here instead of a Raspberry Pi 0W logo. So this is the wrong module. And of course I bought a new one yesterday as well, and this is it. So this one came out of the Netherlands itself and has a 1 or 2 day delivery, and is cheaper than the ones in China. So I think I'm gonna buy that from now on. And as you can see here, there is a metal plating here which indicates apparently that this is a Wi-Fi module. Now I'm gonna try in the corner.